Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Tea Time with Elsa and Atlas. Atlas is sleeping in the sun, and he's not sure whether he's going to come over and eat hay with us for tea time or not. But I have my tea, and I'm glad for any of you guys who can join us. And Breeze is here as well. Breeze is going to make sure that he protects us from all of the deer and wildlife in the woods. So if you hear the occasional bark, it's Breeze here. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the speed of training. Hey Des, thank you. Atlas says hi back. We've got Logan and George and Sal and Cindy here. It's getting to be quite the party. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining me for tea. Atlas is going to come on over and eat a little hay with us. I wanted to talk about the speed of training because this is a subject that weighs on me a lot as a professional trainer. I feel like there is pressure on me to produce results in a reasonable amount of time. And I always say freedom-based training is the slowest possible way to train a horse, to try and take away some of that pressure. But I'm still human, and I still feel the pressure to produce results. I remember when I was performing with the Pirellis many, many years ago, and I had this conversation with Pat Pirelli where I said, you know, it seems like you're putting a lot of pressure on this horse. And I thought you said slow and right beats fast and wrong. And Pat Pirelli looked at me and he said, yeah, but fast and right beats slow and right. And that's been something that I have been thinking about ever since he said it to me. Is fast and right better than slow and right? And it really depends on what you want in life. I like the slow road. I like the kind of relationship I have with horses when I don't pressure them to change quickly. Now, I do want horses to change and become the best version of themselves possible, but I don't want them to do it quickly. I want them to do it in a way that feels good to them. And so, yeah, exactly, George. It's not on the surface, my progress always. Sometimes it's steep and it's hard to measure. But Atlas here and I, we had a kind of a scary thing happen a couple of days ago. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted to talk about it, but here we go. I've been trying to get Atlas used to the halter because I want to get him out into bigger spaces. I want to get him out on the pasture. I want to feel like he is safer to be around. And in the human world, you need to be able to wear a halter and be led, if you're a stallion particularly, before anybody will give you more freedom. So because I want to give Atlas more freedom, I increased the pressure about teaching him to wear a halter. And I had some failures, I had some successes. Things were going pretty well. But late in the evening, I was with him and I was stroking his neck, and I had a long piece of rope hanging from my hand. And that long piece of rope was brushing his shoulder as I stroked the upper part of his neck. And then out of nowhere, he flipped the top of his head and the top of his neck down towards me. Now, he didn't hit me. Nothing bad happened, but it was completely reflexive. It was like no thought went into it whatsoever. His body just reacted, and it felt like he stopped himself short of throwing his whole body weight down on top of me. And I was in a strangely calm state of mind, so I just kept stroking his neck, and he did it 2 more times. And he didn't hurt me. He never actually hit me, but it was incredibly fast how quickly that massive head and neck came at me. And I have never had an experience with Atlas where he came at me with no warning. And that was really kind of frightening. I don't think he meant to do it. I think it was a reflex. I think he was overwhelmed by the feeling of my hand on the top of his neck and the rope brushing his shoulder at the base of his neck. And that overwhelmed feeling led to reaction that was in that fight category. But he stopped short of actually impacting me. After the third time he did it, he actually took a huge deep breath, big sigh, seemed to let everything go, and then I quit for the day. And it was only thinking about it later that I realized how threatening that felt. To have this big guy throw his body at me like that with such speed and such power with no warning at all. And yeah, I think, George, it's got to be muscle memory. I don't think he planned it. I think it just happened to him. It's a reaction, it's an instinct, it's a muscle memory. And what that really got me thinking about is the value of taking things slow. When change or progress happens too fast, what happens is horses revert to old patterns. And if your horse has really good old patterns, that's okay. When things happen too fast and they get overwhelmed, they just go back to what they did before that worked. When you have a horse like Atlas, who was given to me, or I bought him, from the slaughter yard after he had been attacking people, you have to be really careful that you don't trigger old behavior. When you make progress too fast and the horse is overwhelmed, they are going to go back to what they used to do that was successful for them. And if you have a horse that's had a wonderful growing up and they've always been with good people, what they will revert to is good stuff. What this guy is going to revert to is not good stuff. And so, how fast is fast enough? I think you have to work within the range of what's tolerable for the horse you have. And so for this guy here, I love him. I absolutely love him. The rate of progress has to be slow enough that he doesn't revert to old patterns. And I'm glad this timing is good for you, Kelly. I've actually been talking with a couple of my students about this. For some trainers, they'll push a horse hard, the horse will revert to old patterns, and then there'll be some sort of extinction pattern where they try and replace old behaviors with new behaviors. And honestly, that's hard work. It also can be dangerous. And I guess my experiment is what if we don't go there? What if we don't trigger the old behaviors? What if we just build the new behaviors so strong that they become the default over time? And yeah, I think, George, you've had similar experiences with your Mustangs that didn't make it in other homes. They learned some bad stuff before they came to you to learn some good stuff, which means the retraining is going to be slower. And it's a good thing I like the slow road. For me, slow and right beats fast and right. There's so many details that I want to know, that I want to learn, that are interesting to me that you miss when you go too fast in the training. So, yeah, I agree, George. It's not untrained. It's not untrainable. We can change these behaviors. It's going to take a little bit more time. It's going to take a little bit more effort. And God, I'm going to learn a hell of a lot along the way. Yeah, Kelly, as a trainer, we worry, is this too slow? Am I failing this horse because I'm not pushing them past their problem? And, you know, maybe some other trainer could push them past their problem, but the fact is nobody's volunteering here for Atlas. I'm the only one that wanted to step up and say, yeah, let's try this. So, yeah, Karen, exactly. Humans do the same thing. When really stressed, we fall back into old patterns. Now, our job with any horse that has had past trauma is to make new old patterns. Okay, so the stuff that we're building today will become their old patterns that they fall into. We just have to build them so strong that when Atlas feels pressure, he's going to fall back into the stuff that he learned with me instead of falling back into the stuff that he learned on the rodeo. And so, yeah, we are going to feel pressure as human beings that we should be able to do this faster. And I wanted to address that today. Maybe. But maybe what we're doing is fast enough. Maybe if we show up every day and we reinforce good patterns, good habits, good plans, good ways of thinking for the horses, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's fast enough. Logan says, some days Willa seems to go backwards in her anxiety with spooking, and I worry that she'll always have the pattern. And, you know, the thing that I would suggest to you, Logan, is notice how many things have changed before those days where she seems to regress, and how many changes triggered that. Because I think it's too many changes at once that trigger those old patterns. Yeah, Julie, I know you've had an interesting go with McCoy. It's frightening when the old patterns pop up unexpectedly. George says, I've joked that I encourage the good stuff to come forward and allow the time it takes to poop out the bad stuff. That's great, George. I think that we are always going to worry, you know, is the old stuff always going to be there? Will we ever really change it? And I will tell you from my lifetime with horses, some of my very, very, very best horse companions were horses that were severely abused or traumatized before they came to me. I truly think that, you know, you can get through this, and a horse's greatest weakness can become their greatest strength. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process. And we have to just keep putting in the good stuff. Just keep putting in the good stuff and give it time. Give it time for the bad stuff to fade away. Right, Atlas? I like this process. I enjoy this process. I am going to be human. There are going to be weeks when I try and push too hard. And what's going to happen when I try and push too hard is we're going to see some of those old patterns reappear for Atlas. And Freya says, the example still sounds like a good situation to me. Scary, but realizing that he also already changed is also building trust. Yes, Freya, I can't read your whole comment on this, but I get your idea. And that is the real positive thing, is that even though this week I had that slight scary moment with Atlas, no one got hurt. He did not actually ever really hurt me at all. He'd never hit me. He never bumped me. He just moved incredibly fast and he scared me. If that's the only thing we ever trigger from his past, I'm going to feel really lucky. So Yeah, Julie, I agree. The ones that have been terribly frightened by their experience with humans are much harder than the wild ones. The wild ones come in as a clean slate and they don't have anything to change. They're just building new patterns with people. These horses like Atlas, the rate of change has to be slower or I will re-trigger old behaviors. And that's just the way it is. If I'm lucky, I will re-trigger a small percentage of his old behaviors. I won't re-trigger any of the worst stuff. I'll re-trigger some of the small stuff like happened this week. And yeah, we just got to keep putting a good amount in that bank of trust. And the more he trusts me, the more careful he's going to be of me, even when he feels those old patterns come up. But I think when we come back to that original idea of how fast is fast enough in horse training, it's really dependent on who the person is and who the horse is. But for me, fast enough is a rate of change that feels like it doesn't trigger any bad old patterns for me or the horse. If we can train without triggering any old patterns that we don't like, then we're going fast enough. Yeah. So I know a lot of you guys agree with me in principle, but I think it's something we don't talk about enough as trainers. There is an inordinate amount of pressure on us to change the horse today because we're a horse trainer and we feel like we should be able to make those changes faster. And fast enough is when you can make changes without triggering old bad behavior. And that's something that I've had to embrace a little bit this week. I pushed it a little too fast for Atlas this week, triggered some old behavior, and now we got to just refill that bank account of trust and get going again on all of our good stuff. Sam says, a great trainer at home. Hannah Dalton has always believed a horse deserves more than their past. Absolutely. Yeah, their past is just a small fraction of who they are becoming. And yeah, Kelly, I agree. Those horses are worth the wait. The learning we get from them is incredible. And I will tell you, the things that I learned from Atlas here are going to help me be better in my feel and timing for every wild Mustang that I get off the range. They won't need the same degree of care that I have to give Atlas, but they will appreciate it. If I can learn from him the kind of care that he needs, and then I can give it to the ones that don't necessarily need it, they're going to appreciate it. And that's the kind of trainer I want to be. So yeah, George, you do. You have horses that have been trained too fast by multiple trainers. And unfortunately, that really instills some fight-flight behavior that's going to get re-triggered anytime things go too fast. So thank you, Julie. Yeah, it is definitely a thesis project for me. I have no idea how long it's going to take. You guys will notice my hair is getting quite long. That's Atlas's fault. I made a joke one day that sort of stuck, that I wasn't going to cut my hair until I had some significant progress with Atlas. So you'll see when you see me with a short haircut, you're going to know Atlas and we finally get to a place where I feel really dang good about it. So that's my thoughts for today. How fast is fast enough with training? I think it's as fast as you can develop without triggering any old bad behavior. And if you're doing that, you're fast enough. All right. Thank you guys for joining me for tea. I'll see you next week. If you have any subjects you'd like me to talk about, make sure you put them in the comments and I will put a little thought into that. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you next week.